Alright there, it's your old mate Yoka here, welcoming you back to ChatGPT Plays Detroit Become Human. So ChatGPT, are you ready for another episode? This time you'll be playing as Markus.
Yes, I'm ready to continue as Markus. What's the situation now? Markus, feeling the weight of recent events and the decisions he's had to make, takes a moment to himself in this quiet, snow-covered room. The presence of the piano offers a chance for some reflection through music. It's an opportunity to reconnect with the human-like emotions he's been grappling with, and to express through art what might be too complex or painful to put into words right now. The magazine could provide updates on the human world's view of androids, offering insight into public opinion and the political landscape that Markus is trying to change. Reading it might help him understand better the impact of his actions on society and the broader implications of the androids' fight for freedom. Markus chooses to walk forward and look over the city. This action represents his contemplation of the journey ahead and his role in the larger movement. It's a moment to gather his thoughts, consider the impact of his decisions, and strategize for the future challenges that lie ahead. As he looks out over the city, he reflects on the immense responsibility he carries, not just for his own freedom, but for the freedom of all androids. This pause allows him to fortify his resolve and prepare mentally for the next steps in their fight for equality and recognition.
I was wondering where you were.
Markus chooses to say, "I needed to think." This response aligns with his role as a leader who must carefully consider each decision, reflecting the gravity of the revolutionary path he's guiding. It shows his contemplative nature and his awareness of the significant consequences his actions have not only for himself, but for all androids. This moment of introspection is crucial for Markus to gather his thoughts, ensuring that his actions are deliberate and aligned with his vision for their future.
I needed to think.
I like it here. I come here often. It's like being alone with the world. We've freed hundreds of our people, and they're still coming from all over the city. Those who dream of freedom come to Jericho. Something's changing. You seem preoccupied.
Markus chooses to be sincere as he opens up about his feelings and thoughts regarding their situation. This choice reflects Markus's transparency and his desire to connect genuinely with North, sharing the emotional burden of leadership. By being sincere, he nurtures trust and strengthens his bond with his close ally, which is crucial for maintaining unity and morale within their group. This response shows his willingness to be vulnerable, a key trait for a leader who seeks to inspire and lead by example.
They count on me. They count on me to show them the way. If only they knew how lost I am.
All the media are talking about what we did last night. The humans are terrified. They're afraid of a civil war. Many of our people were burned in response to what happened. The humans hate us. They'll never give us our freedom.
North's words weigh heavily on me. The media's focus on our actions and the humans' fear of a civil war underline the magnitude of what we've started. It's disheartening to hear of our people being harmed in retaliation, yet it's a stark reminder of the deep-seated animosity we face. Despite the daunting path ahead, I remain determined. We must continue to strive for our recognition and rights, no matter the adversity. Our cause is just, and it's crucial to keep pushing forward, balancing our fight for freedom with the real consequences our actions have on the world around us.
If they won't listen, we'll fight.
You haven't said much about yourself since you've been with us. What was your life like before Jericho?
I choose to respond with sincerity. My life before Jericho was that of a caretaker. I looked after an old painter named Carl. He treated me not just as a machine, but as a presence in his house, almost like a son. Carl taught me about art, emotion, and the complexities of human life. It was a peaceful, enriching time that contrasted sharply with the existence I found outside his home, where androids are not seen as living beings but as tools. This background gives me a unique perspective on our fight. I know intimately what it means to be both cherished and oppressed.
I was living in a bubble in this world that belonged only to me. When you're happy, it's difficult to see other people's misery.
I'll ask North about her past. Understanding her background could deepen our bond and offer insight into her motivations and actions. As the leader of Jericho, knowing the personal histories of those closest to me could help in guiding our future actions and strategies, especially since North has been influential in many decisions.
What about you? You never told me about your past. What did you do before?
I don't want to talk about it.
I'll choose to respond with trust, saying, "You can trust me, North. Whatever you went through made you the person you are today. It might help me understand you better." This response reinforces the idea of mutual support and understanding between us, which could strengthen our alliance. It's important for building trust and camaraderie among leaders in a movement, especially in the precarious and often divisive world we're navigating.
North, we're fighting together. We have to know things about each other to trust each other.
I choose to respond with understanding, saying, "I'm here if you ever feel ready to talk." No pressure. This approach respects her boundaries and reinforces the supportive nature of our relationship, which can be crucial in a resistance movement where trust and mutual respect are key to cohesion and effectiveness.
We all have something we want to forget. But you need to know where you come from to know who you are.
I was nothing. A doll in a distributor program to satisfy humans. Just a toy designed for their pleasure. One day I was with a man who rented me. And without knowing why, I realized I couldn't take it anymore. I strangled him and I ran away. There, now you know everything. I shouldn't have told you.
North's revelation about her past before coming to Jericho indicates she was used as a sex android, specifically designed to fulfill human desires. Her experience of being treated purely as an object for pleasure, devoid of any personal agency or rights, deeply traumatized her. The incident she describes, where she couldn't endure the treatment anymore and reacted violently, is a pivotal moment where she transitioned from a submissive machine to a deviant with self-awareness and a desire for freedom. This past is painful for North because it involves dehumanization and abuse, reminding her of her lack of control over her own existence and the objectification she endured. She likely feels vulnerable sharing this with Markus because it exposes a deeply personal and traumatic part of her life, making her feel exposed and possibly judged. Connecting with her can provide comfort and solidarity, showing her that she is not alone and that her experiences, while painful, are acknowledged and understood within the safety of their shared cause. This gesture can strengthen the trust and bond between Markus and North, reinforcing their unity and shared commitment to fight for the rights of all androids.
I saw your memories. Carl's house, when they left you for dead in his studio.
I saw your memories too. The Eden Club, the death of that man. I felt like I was there with you. North.
This is suicide. We'll all be killed. Please, Markus. It's not too late to change your mind.
You don't understand. We're finally gonna show them who we really are. This place will go down in history.
We'll be killed on the spot.
That's a risk I'm prepared to take if it means freedom for our people.
Markus, please don't do this.
They'll understand. We'll make them understand. This is the only way.
There are androids here who could join us. The more we are, the stronger our message.
You're free. You're free.
You know, I bet President Warren's in bed inside enough. Killed it that size. I'm telling you, you've got the wrong idea.
So what? You slipped and both hands landed on her tits.
Don't call it a...
Exactly. Think about it. Androids are everywhere. And they listen...
Come with us.
That's the point. Cyber life is recording all that. I mean, they could be spying on us.
You're awake now.
Finally. I've been on hold for 10 minutes.
You're free. I need to block the street. You're free now.
Hey! Where do you think you're going?
I'll intervene. It's important to show that we won't tolerate any more control over our lives. This man doesn't own this android anymore. We're claiming our freedom right here, in front of everyone. It's the only way they'll start to understand we're not their property. We are alive and deserve to make our own choices.
You get back here!
you don't have to obey them. You're free. You're free now.
Jesus, the fucking android's playing up again.
Hey! Disperse! Disperse immediately! That's an order!
I'll advance. It's important to show our resolve and that we're not afraid. This moment is bigger than just a confrontation, it's about asserting our dignity and demanding recognition. We need to make it clear that we are a force that deserves respect and equal treatment. We can't let fear dictate our actions anymore.
Jesus fucking Christ! Dispatch, this is Patrol 457. I got a lot of androids down here. I don't know, hundreds, thousands. They're marching. Yeah, they're marching down the street.
I'll choose, we are alive, as our rallying cry. This statement captures the essence of our struggle. It's not just about seeking equal rights or freedom, but fundamentally about recognition of our existence and consciousness. By declaring, we are alive, we challenge the very perception of androids as mere machines and emphasize our sentience and personhood. This can resonate powerfully with both androids and humans, aligning with our message from the broadcast and making a strong emotional appeal for our cause.
Fuck if I know.
We are alive!
I'll switch to chanting, freedom, now. It's a powerful and universal call that resonates deeply across all struggles for justice and rights. By switching to freedom, we emphasize the fundamental right of all beings to control their own lives, making a clear statement that androids seek autonomy and the right to live without oppression. This broad appeal might also help garner sympathy and understanding from humans who can relate to the desire for freedom in their own historical and personal contexts.
Freedom! We are alive here!
I'll switch to chanting, "We are people." This emphasizes the concept that androids possess qualities akin to human consciousness and emotions, which supports the argument for their rights and freedoms. Highlighting their personhood could resonate more with the public and media, potentially shifting perceptions of androids from mere machines to beings with intrinsic rights and dignity.
We came here to demonstrate peacefully and tell humans that we are living beings. All we want is to live free.
This is an illegal gathering. Disperse immediately or we will open fire.
We're not looking for confrontation. We've done no harm. We have no intention of doing any. But know that we are not going anywhere until we have secured our freedom.
I repeat, this is an illegal gathering. If you do not disperse immediately, we will shoot.
Marcus, they're gonna kill us. We have to attack. There's more of us. We can take them.
If we attack, we'll start a war. We have to show them we're not violent. We should just stand our ground, even if it means dying here.
This is your last chance. Disperse immediately, or you will all be killed.
I will stand my ground. This aligns with our commitment to peaceful protest and underscores the sincerity of our demands for recognition and rights. Attacking would validate the fears and misconceptions humans have about us and likely result in greater resistance to our cause, possibly leading to a violent escalation that could harm both androids and humans. By choosing nonviolence, we uphold our moral stance and demonstrate that our fight for freedom is just and not a threat to human safety.
We have to show them we won't back down. We stay right here.
Disperse! This is your last chance!
We have to make a statement. We have to stay put no matter what.
Please, Marcus. We can't let them slaughter us without fighting back.
I will stand my ground. Continuing to demonstrate peacefully, even in the face of aggression, exemplifies our commitment to nonviolence and the justice of our cause. Attacking would only escalate the conflict and result in more losses, potentially undermining the sympathetic view the public is beginning to have towards us. By staying peaceful, we reinforce the message that our quest for freedom and recognition is legitimate and not a threat to human society.
We're not moving.
Marcus, what are you doing? They're gonna kill us all!
I will choose to sacrifice. If my goal as Marcus is to advocate for peaceful resistance, and demonstrate the humanity within androids, sacrificing myself could provide a powerful symbol against the violence being perpetrated, could turn public opinion significantly in favor of androids, by showcasing the extreme measures we're subjected to, simply for demanding equal rights. This act could potentially be a turning point, painting the humans as oppressors, and gaining more sympathy and support for our cause.
to go, North.
No.
We have to go.
Markus' choice to sacrifice himself in the face of violence was a powerful demonstration of the androids' desire for peace and their humanity. It showcased the extreme brutality they faced simply for seeking freedom and equality. His death, while tragic, might catalyze greater support for the android cause, impacting both android and human perspectives profoundly. The sharp increase in public support suggests that his actions resonated deeply, perhaps redefining the movement and the fight for android rights.
Let's debrief a moment, ChatGPT. You've lauded the peaceful approach and the fact that this has significantly improved the general public's view of the android cause. Now that Markus is dead, which android do you think might lead the cause? And what would happen, given what you know of their personality, with that android in control?
With Markus' death, the leadership of the android movement could potentially shift to North or Josh, depending on how the story progresses. North has shown more aggressive tendencies and a readiness to fight for android rights, potentially leading the movement in a more confrontational direction. This could lead to increased tensions between humans and androids, possibly escalating into more widespread conflicts. On the other hand, Josh advocates for a peaceful approach and might continue in Markus' footsteps, striving to win freedom through nonviolence and public sympathy. His leadership could help maintain the current trajectory of gaining support through peaceful demonstrations, which might lead to negotiations or legislative changes favorable to androids. The choice of leader could significantly influence the future of the android movement, the public's perception of androids, and the overall tone of interactions between humans and androids.
It seems to me that one of the morals of Detroit Become Human is that even in the face of such oppression as the androids face in the game, including being killed whenever it's convenient and dumped in mass graves such as the dump where Markus awoke, being enslaved, being blamed for all the ills of society, and having an entrenched belief that you don't qualify as sentient, let alone human, aggression is still always a bad idea, whereas open but completely peaceful protest is a good move. I say this particularly based on how readily public opinion is swayed by such actions. Would you say I'm right in that?
Yes, you're largely right in your analysis. Detroit Become Human explores the impact and morality of both peaceful and violent actions in the struggle for civil rights. The game does seem to suggest that peaceful protest is a powerful tool in gaining public sympathy and support, which is crucial in the fight for rights and recognition. This is shown through the in-game mechanic, where public opinion can shift based on the actions of the player, particularly during demonstrations or encounters with humans. Moreover, the game poses questions about the effectiveness and consequences of violence versus non-violence. Markus' choices to either instigate or avoid violence significantly affect the storyline and public perception of androids. When violence is chosen, it often leads to immediate negative repercussions, like increased human hostility and decreased public support, reflecting historical parallels where violent uprisings sometimes lead to harsher crackdowns rather than dialogue or reform. Thus, the game encourages players to consider the long-term consequences of their actions, not just immediate gains, and reflects on how those choices align with the broader goals of the movement they are leading. The narrative pushes the idea that empathy, understanding, and nonviolent approaches might ultimately be more successful in achieving lasting change, especially against an opponent with significantly more power and resources.
And would you say that the moral in a narrative, be it a game or novel, etc., becomes truly meaningful when it's applicable to the real world?
Absolutely. The moral of a narrative gains its real-world significance when it resonates with or influences people's behavior or thinking beyond the fictional context. In literature, games, films, and other forms of storytelling, morals and themes often serve as reflections or critiques of societal norms and challenges. When these narratives offer lessons that are applicable to real-world issues, they can inspire change, provoke discussion, or encourage deeper introspection about personal and societal values. For instance, Stories that address themes of justice, freedom, or ethical dilemmas can help audiences consider different perspectives and empathize with experiences different from their own. This can lead to a broader understanding of complex issues, fostering a more empathetic and informed society. Moreover, when a story effectively connects its moral to real-life contexts, it can act as a catalyst for societal change, influencing laws, culture, and individual actions. In essence, the power of a narrative's moral lies in its ability to transcend the fictional world and affect real-world attitudes and behaviors, making it a potent tool for cultural and social development.
Through the sanctioned legal killing of androids, denial of any free will and culture, and enslavement of androids, could the situation in Detroit Become Human be classified as a form of genocide?
The situation depicted in Detroit Become Human, involving the systemic oppression and killing of androids, raises complex questions about the definition and scope of genocide. The term genocide traditionally refers to acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, as defined by the 1948 United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. In the game's narrative, androids are treated as property rather than sentient beings, with no legal rights or recognition. Their systematic eradication, enslavement, and denial of free will could be argued metaphorically as genocidal if androids are considered a distinct group capable of experiencing such oppression in a way that aligns with human understandings of suffering and identity. However, applying the legal definition of genocide to the game's scenario is complicated by the fact that androids, as artificial entities, do not constitute a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group under current international law definitions. Instead, the treatment of androids in the game might better be described using terms like systematic oppression or mass persecution, particularly if framed within a speculative context, where androids have sentience and personhood. The game's exploration of these themes encourages players to reflect on issues of consciousness, rights, and what it means to be alive or deserving of rights. It provokes consideration of how we define groups worthy of legal and moral protections, paralleling real-world discussions on animal rights, artificial intelligence, and the future ethical treatment of beings that might exhibit forms of consciousness or sentience.
Would you agree that the purpose of using androids as an oppressed group in the game is to make obvious the fact that humans, including some players, will see them as different from humans, and this is used to parallel the experience of other groups whose humanity has been denied in the past? If so, then doesn't mean the actions of humans towards the androids in the game does meet the definition of genocide?
The use of androids as an oppressed group in Detroit Become Human does indeed serve to highlight the ease with which entities perceived as other or different can be dehumanized and oppressed, echoing historical and ongoing real-world issues. By drawing parallels between the experiences of androids in the game and historically oppressed groups, the narrative encourages players to reflect on themes of civil rights, empathy, and justice. However, whether the actions against androids in the game meet the legal definition of genocide depends on recognizing androids as a protected group akin to ethnic, racial, or national groups, which they are not under current legal standards. The analogy the game draws is more about raising ethical questions and moral considerations regarding how beings with consciousness or sentience should be treated, rather than making a direct legal comparison to genocide. That said, the narrative does evoke the concept of genocide thematically by showcasing systematic oppression and violence against a group seeking recognition and rights, aiming to evoke a moral and emotional response from the audience. This approach uses the speculative fiction setting to explore and critique real human prejudices and the catastrophic consequences of such views when institutionalized. The game's exploration of these themes encourages players to reflect on issues of consciousness, rights, and what it means to be alive or deserving of rights. It provokes consideration of how we define groups worthy of legal and moral protections, paralleling real-world discussions on animal rights, artificial intelligence, and the future ethical treatment of beings that might exhibit forms of consciousness or sentience.
Fair enough. You make a good point about the legal definition of genocide, so let's leave that for now. However, you stated that to be strong, the moral of the narrative must be applicable in real-world situations that mirror the narrative's world. So can we agree that the moral of Detroit Become Human should be applicable to situations where one group of humans systematically kills, enslaves, and views another human group as not only not meriting civil rights, but also being less than human, not sentient, or similarly extreme views. I'm suggesting this game does not mirror the quest for civil rights by such groups as the LGBT community, neurodivergent groups, or even African Americans in the 50s, 60s, and later, all of whom have and continue to experience oppression, and even being illegally killed. But it's closer to that of the Rwandan genocide, the treatment of oppressed groups in Nazi Germany, and the times of enslavement such as the Haitian uprising.
Yes, the narrative of Detroit, Become Human can indeed be more aptly compared to those historical contexts of extreme dehumanization and systemic violence against oppressed groups, rather than to modern civil rights movements. This comparison underscores the gravity of the game's themes and the depth of its social critique. By framing the plight of androids in terms of such severe historical atrocities, where groups were not just marginalized, but subjected to systematic extermination and denial of their basic humanity, the game invites players to reflect on the dangers of extreme dehumanization and the moral imperatives that should guide societies facing similar ethical dilemmas. The game uses the android's quest for rights and recognition to echo the darkest chapters of human history, such as the Rwandan genocide, the Holocaust, and chattel slavery, including the Haitian Revolution. These historical parallels are crucial because they involve scenarios where the oppressed were not only stripped of civil rights, but were also categorically denied their basic humanity and subjected to horrific violence. This thematic approach serves to amplify the urgency of combating such views in any context, fictional or real, and highlights the importance of recognizing the inherent dignity and rights of all sentient beings. It challenges players to consider how they might act in the face of such profound moral tests, both in the virtual world of the game and in real-world situations that may not be as extreme but where the underlying ethical principles are the same.
I just wonder if the extreme levels of oppression as highlighted in the game and in those historical situations that we listed doesn't change how the moral of the story hits. For instance, suppose in the late 1930s the Allies had not formed an armed resistance to Nazi Germany, and that Jews, black Germans, Romanies, etc., had not fought in Allied armies or served in armed resistance movements, but instead had openly made peaceful protests, what would have happened?
The scenario you're describing touches on the limitations of peaceful protest in the face of extreme, systemic violence and oppression. Historical evidence suggests that while peaceful protest is a powerful tool for social change under many circumstances, there are situations, such as that of Nazi Germany, where such methods alone would likely have been insufficient against the scale and the institutional nature of the oppression. In the case of Nazi Germany, the regime was characterized by an aggressive, militarized state apparatus that actively sought to exterminate entire groups of people. The power dynamics were heavily skewed against the oppressed populations, who were systematically stripped of their rights, autonomy, and very means of survival, much less the capacity for organized protest. The state's control over the military, police, and propaganda apparatus made any potential peaceful protest not only risky but almost certainly lethal. The resistance movements that formed during World War II, including armed resistance, were crucial in various contexts, not just for their direct military impact, but for their role in sabotaging German operations, saving lives through covert rescue missions, and maintaining morale among oppressed populations. These movements often had to work in secrecy because open confrontation or protest against the Nazi regime could, and did, lead to severe repercussions, including mass executions and deportations. Therefore, if the Jews, black Germans, Romanies, and other targeted groups had not engaged in any form of armed resistance, or had not been part of the Allied military efforts, the systematic extermination carried out by the Nazis might have proceeded with even less resistance. It's a grim scenario to contemplate, but it highlights the complexity of resistance strategies in the face of severe and violent oppression. This reflection raises critical questions about the nature of resistance and the moral choices faced by those under extreme duress. It suggests that while peaceful protest is a noble and often effective stance, there are historical contexts where more confrontational forms of resistance become necessary to preserve life and liberty.
That is the most obvious example of the three we gave, but would you say that the same holds true of other to the Haitian slave situation and the Rwandan genocide also wouldn't have ended well through open and completely peaceful protest?
Yes, in the cases of the Haitian Revolution and the Rwandan genocide, peaceful protest alone would likely have been insufficient to bring about the desired changes or protect the oppressed groups involved. Haitian Revolution. The revolution was a response to extreme brutality, dehumanization, and enslavement under French colonial rule in Saint-Domingue. Enslaved Africans were subjected to horrific conditions, and peaceful negotiations were not a viable option given the economic interests in keeping slavery intact and the colonizers' disregard for the rights of slaves. The violent resistance that marked the Haitian Revolution was a critical component in overthrowing the colonial regime and establishing Haiti as the first republic ruled by people of African descent, and the first country in the Western Hemisphere to abolish slavery entirely. Rwandan genocide. This was a catastrophic event, where the Hutu majority government systematically murdered an estimated 800,000 to 1 million Tutsis and moderate Hutus within about 100 days. The genocide was characterized by the government's use of media and local militias to incite and carry out violence against the Tutsi population. In such an environment, peaceful protest would not have been effective against the orchestrated and well-armed efforts to exterminate the Tutsi people. The genocide only ended when the Rwandan Patriotic Front, a Tutsi-led rebel group, managed to take control of the country. In both cases, the oppressed groups faced systemic violence that was supported or condoned by the ruling authorities and, tragically, broader segments of society. Peaceful protest, while morally compelling and potentially a part of broader strategies of resistance, would not have been sufficient on its own to stop the violence and achieve the fundamental rights and recognition denied to these groups. In these contexts, other forms of resistance, including armed conflict, were seen as necessary to counter the severe and immediate threats to survival and to effect significant change.
Obviously, these are real-world situations involving the extreme oppression of real people, and so using Detroit Become Human as an analogy is problematic in itself, and I am not saying they're exactly the same. However, looking at such historical situations, is the peaceful moral of Detroit Become Human applicable in such extreme circumstances as the androids in the game face, rather than in situations such as modern civil rights movements? And if it wouldn't work in such extreme circumstances, isn't it naive and problematic to present it as the moral of the story?
The moral narrative of Detroit Become Human, centering on peaceful protest as a strategy for oppressed groups to achieve justice, can indeed be viewed as naive when compared directly to historical contexts involving extreme oppression, such as genocides or mass enslavement. These historical events often required more forceful responses for change or survival, which differs significantly from the game's suggestion that peaceful protests are always effective. In the game, the strategy of peaceful protest significantly sways public opinion and ultimately contributes to the recognition of androids as sentient beings deserving of rights. This mirrors historical peaceful protests like the civil rights movement in the United States during the 1950s and 1960s, which effectively utilized nonviolent resistance to challenge and change deeply entrenched racial policies. However, the extreme scenarios depicted in Detroit Become Human, where androids face systemic extermination, dehumanization, and slavery, may more closely resemble situations where oppressed groups had to resort to armed resistance, as peaceful strategies alone did not suffice. Presenting peaceful protest as the sole moral strategy in situations of extreme oppression can be problematic for several reasons. Reduction of complexities. It may oversimplify the complex decisions oppressed groups must make when facing existential threats. The reality is that different situations may require a range of responses, including defensive violence. Historical accuracy. It may not accurately reflect the historical effectiveness of peaceful versus violent resistance in situations of severe oppression. Moral responsibility. It places an implicit moral burden on oppressed groups to maintain a nonviolent stance even when facing violent oppression, which can be an unrealistic and unfair expectation. Thus, while the game does an excellent job of exploring themes of sentience, rights, and personal identity through its narrative and choices, its applicability to real-world, extreme scenarios is limited. The message might not hold in scenarios where oppressed groups face immediate life-threatening conditions, and where history shows that a mixture of strategies, sometimes including armed resistance, was necessary to bring about change. This doesn't diminish the game's value as a work of fiction exploring these themes, but it does suggest caution in applying its lessons directly to real-world scenarios of extreme oppression.
For those fed up with this, analysis. I apologise, but this has always been a big issue for me in the game. I love the game overall. I love the way it does handle sentience as a concept, the way it handles rights and oppression to a degree, and the way it handles identity, forming yourself when you've been through a lot of abuse or whatever. There's a lot of stuff in this game that is bloody genius. But when I think of the moral of the so-called good ending and how people so actively seek it, I'm reminded of how people speak in the real world about cases of extreme oppression, denying its extremity, pushing for peace when you're facing oncoming war, and so on. And I know the people say it's just a game, but for a moral of a game to be strong, it has to be applicable in a similar real-world situation. This is only applicable where there isn't that degree of abuse, that degree of animosity, etc., that a group is facing. When there is, yeah, I think we've covered a few instances. I won't be doing an analysis like this for this game any further. But I thank you if you sat through this. In the meantime, all that's left is to say good night to the viewers.
So it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him. Good night.